Hi, I'm Mark Hoebee, producing artistic director at Paper Mill Playhouse, and welcome back to Babbling by the Brook. Today, I am so excited to introduce you to two key members of the creative team of our upcoming production of the murder mystery farce Clue. Please help me welcome director Casey Hushion and writer Sandy Rustin. Hey, Sandy. Hey, Casey. Welcome.
Hi, Mark.
Good to see you both. You look amazing, both of you. Great lighting, great background.
Thank you. This is the best we could do with quarantine haircuts right now. So
I think your hair looks amazing.
thank you.
Sandy, you too. Beautiful.
Oh, well, thanks. You know, it's just a little, it's white highlights. They're really doing it for me.
Oh, I think I guess you'd call mine low lights. I don't know. Anyway, I'm so happy you could join us today for a little time and that we're excited about talking about this wonderful project, Clue, which of course, Sandy, you have written and Casey, you are directing. Let's just back up a little bit. Sandy, you and I have known each other for a few years.
Yeah. Mark, we've known each other for like 20 years.
Okay, so how's it
More than
possible?
that, 22.
How's it possible you don't even look 30? And yeah, we met at Northwestern.
We met at Northwestern. You came in as a guest choreographer to choreograph my senior year production of Sweet Charity. And you were like a celebrity on campus. It was you came in and you were like, you could imitate Gwen Verdon. Will you imitate Gwen Verdon?
Well, there are always notes. Yes, I remember that production very well.
Me too. You were amazing. It was so thrilling.
Thank you. It was quite ambitious because Northwestern, where I went to, is a great program. You know, started with acting and then musical theater, but not always known for their dance. And
what do you mean, Mark? I'm an amazing dancer.
But we did all the original Fosse choreography. I mean, I altered it a little. I had done the last tour with Bob Fosse, but I remember coming in and saying, we're going to do it. We are going to put it up and make it happen. And it was really, really an impressive production.
It was a very special time. I remember it so.
I can't wait to see you to do a couple counts of 8 for me.
No, we'll see. I don't know. Yeah. We'll have to get the music on.
Yeah.
But you did some comedy bits in that too, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Some of the great
that was my jam back in the day.
Oh, it's amazing. And Casey, you and I are new best friends. We traveled in the same circles for a long time, but this is the first project that's really brought us together.
Yes, and I live about 7 minutes door to door from my house in Maplewood to Paper Mill, so we see each other at different openings and shows. And I don't know if you remember this. I was just thinking about this today. I don't know how many years ago it would have been. You would know better than I did. But I was an assistant director on a show at Paper Mill. It could be like 15, 20, I mean, I don't know how many years ago, but it was a production of Annie with Sarah Hyland from Modern Family.
Exactly.
Do you remember?
Yes, was it Greg Ganakis?
Yes.
Who's the director? Yes, yep. And it was, the Miss Hannigan was Catherine Cox.
Yes, yes.
And yes, it was Sarah Hyland, who, I can't remember what her character's name is on Modern Family.
Modern Family.
She's the older daughter who played Annie at that time.
And she was fantastic.
She was fantastic. I remember though, it was interesting. She was great in the show. But she was just on the edge of becoming an adult. She was probably like maybe 14 or 15.
Yep.
And when it got to the parts where they wanted her to be like cutesy, she was kind of like, I don't know. She was amazing. That was a while ago. Oh my gosh.
So that's our point of origin, but It's been great to connect with you again.
I'm so excited.
Too.
And you've had quite a varied career.
Yes.
Right? Tell us a little bit about your journey. I mean, we have another Casey in common, right?
We do. We have Casey Nicolau in common.
Right, who I was in the chorus with Casey.
No way.
Victor Victoria. I have a very, very strong memory of sitting in the dressing room. I was leaving the show. Casey and I had been in it together. And my replacement as dance captain swing was Rob Ashford. And the three of us were sitting in the dressing room looking in the mirror. And we were all in our 30s, early 30s, or mid 30s maybe. And we were all looking, going, we can't dance much longer. What are we going to do with our lives? And those guys did pretty well.
Yeah, I think you all figured it out, actually.
But anyway, talk to us a little bit about that, because you've also run a theater like I do.
Yes. I have
How,
a couple different prongs of career things that have happened over the years, and working with Casey is one of them. He's the best, and he's my dearest friend, and we've known each other for, I guess, about 20 years now. We've been working together that closely over the years, from Drowsy Chaperone on to Elf to Mean Girls, Prom, all of those shows I've been the associate or resident director on, Aladdin too. And I just love working with him. It's like the most perfect, delightful collaboration. We just have a very special groove together. So that's one incredibly fortunate kind of ride that I've been on over the years. And then of course I do my own work regionally and in New York and stuff. And for 10 years, I was the artistic director at North Carolina Theater.
wow.
Yeah, which was fantastic. I learned so much, and I'm able to see things from such different viewpoints that I never had that perspective before. So I loved it. It was incredible.
And I think that must be helpful as a director, right?
Oh my God, yes.
Understand all sides of the process, right?
And I bet you know too, Mark, as a director and doing what you do at Paper Mill, there's a skill you learn when you're watching other directors work and you're going to give notes. They're like, you want to distill it down to like about 3 to 5 key notes that will be largely impactful and really make a difference in the production, as opposed to the millions of small little things that you're watching going like, oh, I might have done that a little. Like, you learn to really find what are the key notes that will make a difference in something. And it's fun to share that collaboration with other directors, because we don't get to work together very often.
No, I mean, that is one of the joys. Like I said, Rob Ashford and I, that was the only time we ever worked together, and he was replacing me. But we had traveled in the same circles on Broadway for years and years and years, but we were the same person. We were the dance captain, swing, so we were never worked together. And that's one of the joys of my job as a producer here at Paper Mill, is I still get to direct, but I get to work with writers, actors, directors, and learn from everybody.
Yes.
And then, you steal from the best, and you know what to avoid. You see what doesn't work. One little thing before we flip to talk about Sandy's journey, but I actually worked at the North Carolina Theater.
You did?
With Deanne and Wally Jones.
Oh, of course. They're like close family.
I choreographed Showboat way, way long time ago. And then I choreographed and performed in The King and I. I can't even remember what year this was. And I danced in the ballet as Uncle Tom and King Simon of Legree. So I know that organization well. And it was funny because then I knew that you were there. That's a great theater, beautiful.
Yes,
huge,
great people.
Civic Auditorium.
And we have King and I in common. The first show I ever directed down there when I was just getting started, my first big regional production was King and I, and it was with Lou Diamond Phillips and Patty Goebel.
Well, who played Uncle Tom and
certainly no one as strong as you, Mark.
I was available.
Had I known, I would have come after you.
Oh my God. And Sandy, I knew you obviously at Northwestern as a student. And then I remember very soon after you got cast as Sandy in A Tour of Greece. Right?
Yes. Yeah, that was my first job.
Sandy, you were Sandy Kraut back then.
I was Sandy Kraut in college. And Dominic Massimi, who our mutual friend and the head of our theater program, he stopped dead in his tracks in the hallway one day, my senior year of college, and he looked at me and he said, Sandy Kraut, that'll never be on a marquee. Change it. And he kept walking. And I was like, oh my gosh. So I took my mom's maiden name when I graduated, which is Rustin.
Great. Fantastic.
Yeah.
So talk to us, because you've also had a varied journey, right?
Yeah. I grew up in Chicago. I grew up kind of steeped in that improv comedy, sketch comedy world. I took classes at Piven Theater Workshop with Joyce and Vern Piven and Shira Piven, Jeremy Piven. I mean, that was sort of my world as a kid growing up, and then went to Northwestern and was always kind of knee deep in improv sketch comedy. Even all my years at Northwestern too. The WAMU show, of course.
Were you in Meow? Were you ever in Meow?
I was not in Meow. No, I did all sorts of other things. I did a lot of musical stuff too there. And yeah, I loved it there. And when I graduated, well, I also studied in London my junior year in college, and I had a dual focus in playwriting and acting while I was there. So I kind of always had one foot in both worlds, sketch writing, playwriting, and performance. And then when I moved to New York, like a few days after I moved to New York, I landed this job. And so I went on tour for a year, which was like grad school, basically. You know, you learn everything you need to know on a tour.
That's right.
Yeah. And I came back into New York, and I was working pretty steadily as an actress in New York and regionally for a long time. And then when I became a mom, I took a step back. I sort of surprised myself. I was covering Molly Ringwald in a play that James Lapine was directing. And I thought, oh, I'll just take a couple months off and have the baby, and then I'll go back in. And after that baby was born, I was like, I don't want to go back. I don't want to do 8 shows a week. And I was shocked and really had like a little bit of a crisis of who I was going to be as a mom, because suddenly I had no interest in going back to this life that I had just treasured. And gradually, within his first year of being a baby, I started to get that creative itch again. And so I started taking classes at UCB in the city, in improv and sketch writing again, and all of that kind of stuff. And I started to write in the sketch writing class. And what I was writing were sketches about new parenthood, because that's where I was in my life. And I had this great teacher, and he said, you know, this is sort of a unique voice. There aren't a lot of people right now writing about young parenthood. Go with it. And so I kept writing, and then I connected with Dan Lipton and David Rossmer, who I'd been friends with. Well, Dan and I went to college together, and I knew David from Don't Quit Your Night Job in New York. And we ended up writing Rated P for Parenthood from those early sketches. And that was kind of my first show, got produced at the West Side Theater. And then it opened all sorts of doors. And so I've been writing since then. So that was 8 years ago. And since then, I've really kind of pivoted more towards playwriting. I still perform. I still love it. And now that my boys are much older, it's definitely still in my world. But I'm really glad that I kind of followed that instinct at that time, because I love it.
It's so funny too that, I mean, I had a varied career as a performer, and then a choreographer and a director, and now I'm a producer, but it seems like so many people, and a lot of the young people I talk to who, you know, it seems like everybody who's in college wants to be a star, right? Well, who doesn't? But there are so many different opportunities in the theater that I think as young people, we get a little narrow-minded, right?
Yeah.
And so to see, you know, Casey as a producer and a director, and you as a writer, that's so exciting. And you're a better director because you were a producer, and you were a better writer, and because you're family people too, and all that. So let's talk about Clue. How did this idea even come about? I mean, we all know it's based on the film. It's based on the board game, right? And then the film, what year was that film? It was Leslie Ann Warren and an incredible
1985, somewhere around there, I think, was the film, right, San?
Yeah, I think so.
And where did the idea come from to translate it to the stage?
I think, Case, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that the commercial producers acquired the rights to the film, and the idea came from that direction.
Yes, I think that's true.
Yeah.
And there were other, Sandy, you know more about the history before you and I got together, but there were different incarnations of the show, different versions. It had changed hands. It was in development over the years, had some different productions. And then Sandy came on board at a certain point in the development process, and she brought me on board.
That was my question. My question was, how did the two of you come to the project? Because I know it had juggled around. There'd been several writers on it.
Yes.
Right. And at least a handful of directors who had touched on the project. And we should talk about Steve Gabriel, who is the kind of rights holder, commercial producer, who's a good friend of Paper Mills and just a great guy.
Yes.
And I guess, has he been involved for the whole time, or I think he's been sort of shepherding the project?
Yeah, exactly. So Steve Gabriel and the guys at Araka, including Michael Barra, who now is Lively McCabe,
Right.
This has been their project from the get-go. And like Casey said, it went through a whole bunch of different iterations, and you know how this business works, and it sort of landed in my hands. And then when it was time to find a director, Casey was very high on all of their lists before I said, like, you know who I'd love to work with.
Also, as a side note, Sandy and I are great friends in our personal life. She's like one of my closest, dearest friends. Our families are all friends. Our kids know each other. And we know each other that way more so than as collaborators until this show. And it's been really exciting to learn with our work together on Clue that we have this great chemistry working together too, because that can be tricky. You know, I was a bit apprehensive to be working with one of my closest friends. I was like, oh, you know, but no, it's hard to go.
We came up with a safe word, Mark.
This joke, or, you know, but we found such a quick and immediate rhythm that in the way we work, and we've got like a bunch of other projects we're working on together because we ended up enjoying it so much. So I'm so happy that we found each other in this way too.
Yeah.
It's really delightful and productive.
When we decided to do this, Casey was like, we have to have coffee. We have to talk about doing this. And so we went, we like sat across from each other and we were like, I'm a little bit nervous. I'm a little bit nervous. And then we're like, let's come up with a safe word. So if we're annoying each other or we're doing something bad, we just have a safe word. But we never needed it.
We didn't need it. Not once.
Not one time.
And you know, it's a challenging process working on a new piece, especially as a writer and a director.
Yes.
And you have differing viewpoints. I mean, but you have to come together on what the journey is going to be. And I believe I had seen an early script of the show, but I didn't really see the production until this recent endeavor that was out at Cleveland Playhouse, which I know is your production, the Casey Sandy production.
Yep.
So let's talk a little bit about that. It was spectacular. I loved everything about it. It's so exciting. I'm thrilled it's coming to Paper Mill. But Sandy, let's talk about from your point of view. You know, how did you approach the book? What were you trying to accomplish, which is so successful in what's happening on stage? But you know, what was your unique touch point? What said to you, yeah, I love this project and I know I can make it happen?
Well, I loved the genre, first of all, and the film was something that I felt like there's something inherently theatrical about it that could be accomplished on stage. The characters are so iconic. There's just so much fun to be had in it. And so the challenge, of course, was how do you maintain those characters and the basic plot points of the film and the tone of voice of the film, you know, the style of comedy and the style of dialogue that exists in the film, but update it so it's, you know, current and relevant to a modern audience, not offensive. You know, there's a lot of inappropriate stuff that isn't going to fly with the modern audience from the film. So how do you do all those things? And the script really evolved enormously once I was able to collaborate with Casey. And Casey came on board with such a clear focus and a clear vision of what the show should look like. And working with her only helped to strengthen my own viewpoint on the show and how to really continue to heighten and play the game that we wanted to play together. I think when Casey came on board, she had this great meeting, and I'll let her talk to you about it, with Jonathan Lynn, who wrote the film. Mm-hmm. And there were a lot of little snippets of wisdom that Jonathan was able to offer to us as a team that really helped to filter into the development of this play theatrically. Two of the things, one was about the sophistication level of it, you know, like we really wanted the show to stand on its own as a piece of theater, separate from the campiness or the vibe from the film. And in doing that leads to the second piece, which was to really honor the time period that this show was, the movie was created in, which was, you know, steeped in McCarthyism and in this 1950s environment. And how can we bring all of that forward and create a true murder mystery and also a true comedy? And how do we stay true to both of those genres? And that was really, I think when Casey came into the picture, that focus for me became very laser focused. And that's when things started to get really exciting, I think.
So Casey, I guess you give 10% of your paycheck to Sandy.
Yeah, thank you, Sam. That was great.
So, well, why don't you tell us about that meeting with the
It was great. I was so excited to meet Jonathan because I'm such a fan, and I grew up loving the film. Like there are people who don't know the film at all, people who are like absolute cult fans of it, who can quote every line, people who are like, there's a wide range.
Yep.
And I loved it. I went to Blockbuster Video and like rented it with my brothers 1,000 times when we were kids, and we could quote it. We had Murder Mystery Party. So when I heard this title, I was like, sign me up. Especially to speak to what Sandy said, is like, I was intrigued by figuring out how to capture the spirit of what I loved about that film and make it something original, and find a way that it exists in a play. But there was a spirit of joy in the comedy, I think, in the film. And amongst that ensemble of actors, there's a little twinkle in their eye of people who love comedy and love to make people laugh. And I really responded to that. And the wordplay, the physical comedy, all of it, I just loved it. But meeting Jonathan was amazing. We had brunch at Giorgio's in the city, which used to be one of my favorite brunch spots. And we talked for about 3 hours and just on and on about all different stuff. But something we really both agreed on was how important it was to have the truth at the core of the show, be really strong and really steady, that these characters really believe in the circumstance they're in truthfully. Because then that heightens the stakes to the ceiling, because they're truly in a life and death circumstance. And it makes everything funnier and truer and stronger, and it eliminates that sort of campy tone that both Sandy and I were not looking for. But one phrase that I remembered of his that I brought to Sandy, we were talking about how we start the show and what is the in, if you want people to be laughing right away or what, but he said very emphatically, Jonathan, the show must have a tone of comic menace at the beginning. He said, menace is very important, but comic menace. And I was like, that's a great little catchphrase. I scribbled it down and I've thought about it from time to time to see if we're delivering that. But I think also to Sandy's point about when I talk about the show, I often describe it as, it's almost as if we're doing two plays, and it requires this meticulous amount of focus and incredible hard work to get it there. We learned that in Cleveland, in our time just sitting together, meeting, having coffee, developing the show for months. Both genres of a murder mystery and a farce require impeccable detail and precision and timing and rhythm. So both of those genres need a ton of attention to detail and specificity and clarity. So you put those together and it was as if we were doing two plays at once and trying to keep them both as truthful and as strong as we could. So I think that's why Cleveland was like, wake up at 6 a.m, work until rehearsal's over, have a burger, and then get a bourbon with Sandy and work until midnight and get up and do it again the next day, But
we were also, oh, go ahead.
No, I was going to say
we loved it.
The thing that was amazing to me in watching the production is it's hilarious, and we'll talk about the cast in a minute, and the physical production, which is so key, I think, to it all working. But we all played the board game, and there are multiple endings depending on who gets what. I thought it's brilliantly handled. I don't want to give anything away about how the show ends, but no matter what ending to the game or the movie or the play there has to be a reality to what could have happened. Yes. Or what did happen. And I remember talking to you, Casey, afterwards, saying that the two of you were up all hours of the night mapping out what we don't see in the show or what happens off stage to make sure that the timing was all right.
Yeah.
Talk a little bit about that.
Because we assumed once all the surprises of the show are revealed by the end, and it's full of surprise, which was another one of our intentions, was that people would come in familiar with the movie and we wanted to keep them on their toes and keep surprising them. But once all of that is revealed, we felt this responsibility that if people were to come back and see the show again, now knowing the full story on all sides, that they would be able to look for all these little tiny details that would be in place, and they wouldn't be able to say, but I noticed in this scene, that we hadn't found every little loophole that they would possibly find.
Part of the work that we did before Cleveland and also in Cleveland was creating almost like a backstage Bible for the show of logic. Just pages and pages of, what's really happening in each moment and what the audience is seeing versus what the person, what that character in their real world is going through. I mean, there's a lot of levels of it, and we really treated it like a science project or a math equation. Right. And we have it all mapped out, which I think helped us when we got into rehearsal to be able to. Yeah, I think
it's great for the actors to understand that.
Yes,
and for the two of you, because that logic and the believability is so important. but it really shows from out front. Because when you're watching the show, and when you talk about you wanted to certainly keep the farcical element, but make sure that it was real. And it's real, like the real timing of what happened, or where people were, and all of that is completely believable. And I think that that's one of the things that keeps the audience on their seat throughout. And then at the end, you realize, wow, that all really, the puzzle comes together, all the pieces fit. I'm excited to now look at when you're putting it together and watch it again, kind of like the first time I saw, what was that movie, I See Dead People?
Oh, The Sixth Sense.
Sixth Sense. The first time I saw it, I was blown away at the end. And then I had seen it in London, and on the plane on the way back, they were showing it again. And I watched it again with that same thing, and you can track it all through. And the brilliance about what the two of you have done with this show is that it's flawless, the way it all works.
This is getting me so excited to work the show again. I can hardly sit still. I was laughing when Sandy was talking also, because there was always like, there's so much logic in the show that we have to manage. And like Sandy said, to get it out of the way up front, so then we could play when we were with the actors, instead of always being like, wait a minute, but you have the this and then that. But there was one like edge of my logic limits that I would always reach when we would start talking about the keys to which room and who had what key in what pocket. And anytime Sandy brought up the keys, I would just be like, I'm blacked out. Like when you say the word keys, I'm out. For some reason, that was the piece of logic that I was always like, which key is in what pocket?
I bring up keys in case you would look at me as if I was like, it's time for the musical number now. She's like, no, I can't talk about keys. I'm like, okay. So I would like write a key document and just like print it and put it on her stack.
For some reason, that was just my limit. When we got to like what key was in what pocket, I was always like, ooh.
What also was so impressive is I remember sitting down in Cleveland and looking at the set and saying, wow, this is beautiful. It's kind of a unit set, it's a box, but it's just like a magical box that just keeps revealing itself. Talk just briefly about that for a second.
Sure. Lee Savage designed the set, and of the many, many joys of working on this show, that was one of the great ones, was working with Lee on this. He and I had worked together on Nerds. I don't know if you know the story of Nerds. That's for another day.
Dennis Jones is a good friend. I know that was sad.
Yeah, but I picked up all these wonderful collaborators from the experience. So he was a great silver lining. And it was similar to the process with Sandy in that it took, weeks of detailed, constant, meticulous thought and meetings. But what we wanted to achieve was to give this sort of ominous Victorian Gothic mansion, but make it a character in the play that was also full of wit, surprise, trickery, and it has to move like lightning. You have to go to 12 different locations, I don't know, kitchen, billiard room, lounge, study, all the famous locations, and you have to move with split-second timing from one location to the next around this mansion, or the momentum of the whole play would die. So it was a really difficult task he was challenged with, but it was so much fun to us to think of what surprising ways can this move? Like how can something pull out of a wall or come up from a floor or move in a way you don't expect it to, just so it wasn't linear and flat, but it had an element of that same sort of spark of wit and joy, and every department gets to play the game.
Well, it reminds me, and you talk about it, there's like 12 different rooms in that mansion that we all know from the flat board that we played on for so many years. And I likened it to like one of those pop-up books where you open a page and things pop up, and then there's a little door that opens, it becomes something else. So the design of it is brilliant. And like you said, it moves so fast. The show moves so quickly. And go ahead, Sandy, you were going to say something.
I was going to say one of the exciting things about working with Casey and Lee when we got to Cleveland was, we had the script that we started rehearsals with, but the script that we wound up with at the end, our opening night script, was really quite far removed from that initial script. And in large part, that was because I was finally able to see how the set could function. Right. And so if we needed a count of 8 to get to the next room, then great, let's fill it with another joke. How do we, and that became really awesome. In addition to being able to write to these amazing actors that we had.
Well, we got to talk about that too, because the cast, which many of them are coming here to Paper Mill, and some of them are our favorite people, but some of the best comedic actors, I think, in the business. I mean, Mark Price, John Tracy Egan, Donna English, Kathy Fitzgerald, Michael Kostroff, Alex Mandel, and Graham Stevens. I mean, each one of them unique in their own being, physicality, skill set. And that must have been just a joy for you, Casey, as a director, and for you, Sandy, as a writer, to be able to discover and explore and expand all of that, your work through them. Yeah.
I can't say enough about this group of people. I know people say these things all the time, but it really, this Cleveland experience with this group of people was so special, and it really became a family almost immediately. Like, they were taking care of each other. So we laughed so much in the creation of this show. Like, there were days we were doubled over laughing and couldn't get through a scene. Like, it would be like the Carol Burnett show when Kathy would do like a soup slurp or something, and Alex would not be able to get through the scene and would have tears running down his face. You know, like, it was full of that kind of laughter, and everyone being like, what if I do this? And what if I do that? And, you know, it's challenging too, because it's like an enormous group scene. You know, you've got all of these incredible actors on stage for the entire play. So you're really having to calibrate who gets focus when and what bit works and which one doesn't. But they were so wonderful throughout the process, at every step of the way, of being a real ensemble and taking care of each other and laughing and creating and being playful. And it was one of the best experiences I've had in a really long time. They're spectacular, this group. And like you say, so unique. So each one is their own vivid, completely different human being that brings a different energy and a different sensibility. And together, what that makes is so much more extraordinary. It's just, It was an absolute delight for me.
What's that like for you as a writer, Sandy, to have those people in the room interpreting your words? And
it's a dream. I think, you know, especially because my background is in improv comedy, where it's always yes and the best idea wins, and it's a very collaborative spirit that I come in to the writer's room with. So walking into this room with this group of actors, where not only were they open to my ideas and changes that I wanted to try out, or a day when I would say, like, I don't know if this bit is working. Do you mind trying these lines? Do you mind trying that? I mean, they were just open. They were game, which was amazing. But also they were coming to me with like, hey, that one part, what if, you know, da-da-da-da-da. And so part of my job in Cleveland was really as a curator, because there were so many ideas from so many smart, brilliant people all the time, that it was really a matter of saying, like, okay, yes, all of those ideas could work. Let's see what's going to get us to the finish line in the most efficient, effective way. And that's really what Casey and I both had our eye on the prize the whole time, of like, yes, that's funny, but do we need this? Do we need that? And pulling from all of those ideas to land at what we felt was the prize at the end of the day. So it just felt incredibly collaborative, open, generous spirit across the board from everybody in that room. And
well, it has all worked beautifully well, because the waves of laughter and the roaring of laughter in the audience is spectacular. And, you know, one of the things that I'm always amazed about with shows like this, which, you know, like you were saying earlier, sort of walk a line between this farcical element and the murder mystery, the comedy. There's so many different sides to it. But Casey brings up something about the rhythm of the show and the rhythm of the actors. And I worked with a director a while ago who really, his specialty is comedy. And he said the best farce and comedy actors are people who are also musical actors, musical theater performers, because they understand the rhythm of music and a song and a beat and a scene. And as I'm looking down this list, that's your cast, you know, Donna and JT and Michael, they all possess that as well. And there's definitely a musical sensibility about the show, and there's music and dance to some degree, Casey,
Yes.
in it, which makes it feel, it feels very musical to me in all aspects of it. And there was some music created for it, right?
Yes, Michael Holland wrote a lot of original music for the show. He has the rights to the theme music of the film Clue, which plays into it, but he wrote a ton of original music, just, you know, underscoring for the right tones of right moments. And, you know, I guess when we say it's a murder mystery, I can give away that there's death. But even those moments need just the right scoring and just the right sounds to make these effects land and get the tone in the right place. So Michael Holland did a really brilliant job, but there's a ton of music in the play.
Yeah.
And even the transitions, they all have, like, the show sort of progressively starts to go more and more off the rails as it goes on, and the music needed to follow that. And he stayed right in alignment with all of those same requirements that we kept placing around the show, and did such a beautiful job. It was a real asset. We loved what the music brought to the production.
Yeah, and also you talk about all those many colors, murder mystery, farce, you know, death, comedy, all of those things heightened by the music and in this incredible environment that's been created on stage by the two of you and by your team. Sandy?
I was just going to say that you're talking about how musical and rhythmic it is. There are a lot of moments in the play that are timed by beats, literally, you know, like you're looking this way and then on the count of three or whatever it is, you know, it's intention in the script and in the direction is musical.
Yeah, well, and that's obvious. And both of you coming with that musical background as well is helpful. So I can't remember who it was who said, you know, shows are never done. You just run out of rehearsal time and you open. I think that was even Sondheim, or Hal Prince. But so now you get another chance to look at the show and bring it to our audience. So before we close up, what's something you're looking forward to revisiting the show here at Paper Mill with this company of actors? Maybe something you want to change or something you want to just play with again?
I think there was so much information we gained. We had a short preview process in Cleveland. I want to say it was about 4 performances or so that we could really note and make changes and make fixes. And you learn so much on a brand new play like you're talking about with all these tonal shifts and rhythms and things. There's so much you learn from every performance that we didn't have as long of a process to implement changes and listen for that. And I think what I'd love to accomplish is, first of all, I want it to feel new and fresh and alive. I don't ever want it to feel as successful and joyful as it was that we're picking up a production and moving it, but I want to rebuild it all over again in a way that says, what have we learned from it? Who are we now? What else can we bring to it? But I'd like to see how much further we can push this. I think what we discovered is what an audience-pleasing, entertaining evening this is. And after we've gained all that information, I'd like to see how much further we can go with it now and see what else is in there. Like, how far can it stretch in terms of its surprises and content and performances and all those things. I think there are a lot of moments I'd like to play with and explore with the knowledge that we have from that preview process now. So I'm really excited to look at it all over again. And to be honest, after being away from theater for a while, it will be, it's hard to even talk about without getting emotional, but how good it will feel to put your hands on a piece that you know is meant to make people laugh and brings a family of actors together and brings family back into the theater and makes them leave the theater having had a fantastic time and laughing together and sharing that energy. It's like, I'm just so grateful and excited to have that to look forward to.
I agree 100%. I can't wait. I think it's the perfect show to welcome audiences back into the theater, to celebrate everything that is just joyous about, you know, spending a night at Paper Mill. And Sandy, what are you looking forward to?
I mean, I couldn't say it any better than Casey just said. I think what Casey was talking about, the preview period, you know, we learned in just that week what jokes were landing like gangbusters every time and which required a little more finesse or which moments needed a little, you know, and I feel like what this opportunity at Paper Mill is going to afford us is to really hone in on that. Yeah. And decide like, yeah, that, you know what, that is the very best thing. That is exactly what I want and exactly how I want it to be. Or like, I think I could do better there. I think I could find something that tops what we already have. So I'm looking forward to that process with all now going into it with just more knowledge of what we learned.
And I love, Sam, that you're not precious about anything. Like you can watch something and it will go out the window in a moment if it's not working for you, or like you're so quick at cycling through new ideas and different thoughts for changes. And I think that's really exciting for us to share that process again. It's so great to watch you just evaluate something and say, nope, okay, let's try this instead. Like you would turn around to rewrite and like, we would sit there and say, let me give Sandy a few minutes to work on that, you know, meaning like give her some space. And then within 2 minutes, she would turn around with the page and be like, try this, you know, and the cast was like, but I'm excited to get back into that part of the process with you.
Thanks, Case. Me too.
Well, we are excited to have both of you here at Paper Mill and excited to bring this show to our patrons. I just know it's going to be joyful and joyous. And I can't thank you enough for spending some time with us today and sharing your insights on this production and just seeing your beautiful faces on the screen. Can't wait to see you here in person and give you both hugs and get started with this amazing show. So thank you. And
thank you.
Clue. Great.
Thanks, Mark.
Talk to you soon.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for joining us today. And don't forget to check out Paper Mill's other virtual offerings. Each Thursday night at 7 p.m. on Facebook, we are airing our Humanities Symposium series. And on Monday nights at 7, also on Facebook, we're airing our New Voices concerts. And be sure to join me here next week when we talk to two of Paper Mill's favorite leading ladies, Elena Shadow and Donna English. Thanks for joining us, and see you next week.